Hello, all you Nightmare Nerds, and welcome back to the Nightmare Network podcast. This week, we are talking about, that's right, one of my all-time favorite movies. This is literally in my top 5 of favorite movies. That's how much I love this movie, and I've been waiting to talk about it for a long time, but I wanted to hold off until I could do it, until I could talk about it and do it with someone special. And that's why today is a really special day for me and Mr. Killian Locke. Killian Locke, are you excited for all of the special, intimate moments and stories we're about to share with Gremlins?
I'm wet.
Oh my God. No, we're not allowed to do that. No, you're not. No, whoopsie. You mean I'm hungry after midnight? Shit, we can't do that one either.
I am excited and dry as the Sahara.
Dry as the Sahara. This is great. Did you plan that, by the way? Your I'm wet joke?
No.
You didn't write that down? You were like, the first opportunity I'm going to come up with is I'm wet?
No, I just went for a dirty joke, and it just so happened to work.
That's because Gremlins is perfect and applicable to every situation, which we will be proving throughout this entire podcast.
Let's go.
Yeah. So, as Nightmare Network tradition, let's start out with, do you remember, Mr. Killian Locke, the first time you saw this movie or any special memories that you have with it in the past?
Oh, fuck. I saw this. I was young when I saw this movie.
This was my choice, so I'm obviously putting you on the spot.
No, you're fine. I think I might have been like 6 or 7 when I saw the first Gremlins. So I don't have a lot of specific memories watching it the first time. I do also remember, I have a specific memory of watching Gremlins 2.
One of the greatest movie sequels of all time. I'm not even kidding. Like, we need to revisit Gremlins 2. One of my talking points is the sequel, but we'll get to that. That movie is incredible. Okay. Just saying.
I do enjoy Gremlins 2. It's batshit insane.
In the best way.
Yes. I do think it's one of the best Christmas movies ever made.
That was also on my list.
Yeah. So instead of me just sort of like randomly checking off boxes on your list, let's have you talk.
Let me jump into here. This was my choice, so I'm glad I put you on the spot for it. But, again, Gremlins was a thing that when I was little, this is a kind of theme on the Nightmare podcast, is that when I was little, my dad used to pick me up from preschool, and we would go and we would rent Godzilla VHSs from Blockbuster. Yeah, it was awesome. And I had like my list of favorite Godzilla movies, which includes Godzilla's Revenge, which is the movie that technically Godzilla's not even in. It's really just like Home Alone, but this kid is like pretending to be Godzilla. That movie was incredible. Anyway. So my dad used to pick me up, and we used to watch Godzilla movies like all the time when I was in preschool. And eventually, at some point, there was so my favorite movie of all time is Tremors. And I think the reason this is because I have a weird, like, hybrid amalgamation type of developmental story that involves Tremors, which is that my dad used to pick me up from preschool, and we would watch Godzilla movies. My sister... my oldest sister used to watch, like, I was born in 91, so she was born in 82, so it was she was like a child of the 80s. So she used to watch like all these old 80s movies a la Footloose, right? So like for whatever reason, I don't know why, I felt like Footloose was on every 5 seconds in my house. And I loved Kevin Bacon. So what happened was my dad was like, he really likes monster movies. He really likes Kevin Bacon. Let's show him Tremors. And then the rest of my life was literally written in stone at that point. So, but I think like in between Footloose and Godzilla and Tremors, like of that three, eventually somewhere in there, my dad was like, let's start him out on Gremlins. Because I think Gremlins, even though something I want to talk about is how this movie gets like almost viciously violent at some point, it kind of starts as like a family movie. And so I have these memories of like watching Gremlins as a kid and being like, oh my God, Gizmo's adorable. I want a Mogwai. I want to get a Mohawk. This is going to be sweet. And then like getting to a point where just like, I don't want any of these things. This is all horrible and people are dying.
I love that story. And I think the big difference between you and I is that growing up, I saw Gremlins and I went, I want a Mogwai, I want a Gizmo, he's so cute. And the gremlin violence didn't put me off at all.
You were like, oh, no, okay,
one.
Actually I want one more now. Because there's a lot of people that I don't like, and I think my pet gremlin would help me out in that regard.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Weaponizing
totally.
pets is something. Welcome to the Nightmare Network podcast, where we talk about weaponizing small pets to torment your bullies.
Yeah, sugar glider, it's a weapon. Parrot, it's a weapon.
Parrot, the perfect weapon.
Yes, it will. It will sing back to them in the voices of their loved ones just before it strikes.
Wow, this got dark really quick, and I love it. It's great. So that was like so. Gremlins to me has always kind of been there in the I love this movie, and I think it was only until like I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago when I started like rewatching it consistently, and then I realized it was one of my favorite movies of all time. And as you stated earlier, it is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Christmas movie of all time, because it is a Christmas movie. And we can get into the is Die Hard a Christmas movie type of argument, because I think that Gremlins also fits into that little hole, except I also think that Gremlins is without a doubt a Christmas movie, and it is more Christmassy than Die Hard. Thoughts?
Oh, it is 100% more a Christmas movie than Die Hard. Die Hard is a movie that just so happens to take place on Christmas, whereas Gremlins is a story about a kid who is given a Mogwai for a Christmas present, and it takes place around on Christmas and is intrinsically about Christmas. There's a whole speech about Santa Claus in the movie.
The saddest speech, by the way.
Yes, it is. It is the saddest speech, but it's like it is more of a Christmas movie than Die Hard. And if you don't like that, you can fight me in the Applebee's parking lot. And
we know that he confirms his kills, so I don't really know if that's something that you guys want to do. But so I 100% agree. And I also think like thematically, it fits in like a really great Christmas movie too, because
yeah.
Something I wanted to talk about was the structure of this movie, which I think is such an it's so beautiful. I'm gonna get my little film student out on you here, but I wrote a paper about the structure of this movie in my script analysis class back in the day.
Is it about how it is structured exactly like a golden age of film cinema? Movie?
Kind of.
Because it is.
It is. So here is my argument. I found...
It's The Wizard of Oz.
It is The Wizard of Oz. And it's actually also It's a Wonderful Life. Like, it's all of them, like, put together. And so what I think is absolutely fascinating about Gremlins is that it fits into a traditional, classic Hollywood 3-act structure. Except... It goes a little something like this. So you have your first act... with your inciting incident, and then the first act to the second half, you reach the midpoint, and the midpoint in this movie is in the middle of the second act is when he knocks Stripe into the water, into the pool in that scene, and then from that point forward, the movie abandons almost all structure for for a very long amount of time. Like the story is very like this happens. You have an inciting incident where we get the Mogwai. You have a first act to second act transition into the midpoint, which is now, and the first act to second act is when they start to build their cocoons, and then you get into the middle of the story, and the midpoint of the second act is when the Stripe falls in the water, and now you have a whole MFing army of gremlins. And I think up until that point, you really don't know what kind of movie you're in for. Like the first act is very much a traditional Hollywood movie. You have a Mrs. DEAGLE, who's literally Mr. Potter from and the Wicked Witch of the West
she's Mrs. Gulch.
Like Mrs. Gulch all rolled into one. Mr. Potter and Mrs. Gulch rolled into one. And then you have you have these really like archetypal, like innocent characters with Billy and everything. And then you get to the midpoint, and for at least a huge chunk of the movie, nothing happens except chaos. There is nothing driving the point of this movie except incremental skits of gremlins murdering people into different incremental skits of gremlins murdering people. So you have this really rigid structure that's like, I can follow that perfectly. Then for a while, it just goes out of this world through like murdering people, watching Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, shooting Mrs. DEAGLE out of a window up top. And then and then you get to a point where you're just like, what in the name of God? Like the movie gets off the rails in the best way possible, and nothing is putting the plot forward at all up until they finally go to the department store and they're like, we have a plan, we're going to kill them. And then it becomes the end of the third act becomes Gizmo's story, and he is now the traditional Hollywood hero or the action hero, where he's driving his car and becoming this the person that is like driving the plot to get the gremlin along with Billy and everybody. And so like in the end, it returns to that third act after taking like a ridiculous loop-de-loop detour in the second act, and that's why this movie is so interesting to me.
Okay, are you ready for me to blow your fucking mind?
Oh my God, blow my mind, please.
What you just described is not a 3-act structure.
It's a fucking
it's a
3-act structure.
You described a 5-act structure.
It's a 3-act structure. I'll fucking kill you.
Nope. And here's the thing. This is why Gremlins is so good, is because it operates on a 5-act structure. You've got the prologue, which is a traditional first act, where the father finds and buys Gizmo. And then you arrive back at home, and you have the moment where it goes from Act 1 into Act 2, or sorry, from like all of Act 2, and Act 2 ends when the son is given Gizmo.
Okay.
And then all of Act 3 is like you get the like Mogwai into the Mogwais, into the Gremlins.
Right, okay.
Act 4 is chaos.
Right.
Act 5 is Gizmo's story.
Okay, so I hear you. I respect you. I hear you. I think you're full of shit, number one. And number two, I got an A on my paper, so you can fuck yourself.
Do you know what dictates an act beat?
Please tell me.
What dictates an act beat is either a decision that is a decision that cannot be unmade, or an event that fundamentally changes the direction of the story, and that happens 5 times over the course of the movie at almost a perfect 15 to 20 minute interval every time.
So that doesn't.
It is a traditional 5-act structure.
That doesn't surprise me that you say that, because Joe Dante, my dude and my writer, by the way, I fucking love Joe Dante. I don't know how you feel about Joe Dante, but he is a straight up G. And I watched The Burbs last night, like randomly.
That movie fucks.
Yo, The Burbs is fucking fire. And like,
so good.
Yeah. And so like, Joe Dante to me, like he is very much like a student of cinema too. And like you could tell, especially with like the incorporation of, like It's a Wonderful Life and like Wizard of Oz and Snow White and all these like classic Hollywood films that are like, it doesn't surprise me that he would be like, I want to format my story in this way, that like classic 5-act structure. So I think that's cool. Also, The Burbs fucks. Please watch The Burbs.
The Burbs is so good. If you haven't watched The Burbs, watch it. It's like, I as a writer if I'm writing a feature film or doing anything, I always write in a 5-act structure because psychologically it is more entertaining than a 3-act structure.
How many cats have you saved, just out of curiosity? Do you?
Oh, there's at least one save the cat moment in almost anything that I write, but there's also at least one kill the cat moment in everything that I write.
Dude, unrelated to anything we're talking about, I just feel like the need to share the story. I literally saved a dog's life yesterday.
Hell yeah.
This is a real story. So there's a Dunkin' Donuts, like I can see it from my front door, but I live on a very busy street. So I was walking to the Dunkin' Donuts, and this woman comes out of her house to get her mail, and our mailboxes are like right in front of the really busy road. So it's one of those ones where you have to like go and we have backs built into our mailboxes so we can get them so we don't walk onto this busy road. So like back doors. So this dog comes out, he sees me, and I'm like, oh my God, dog, I love you. And so I go to pet the dog, and he's so excited to see me, and I'm petting him, and she's like, oh, he's so cute. While she's getting her mail out of the mailbox right next to the busy road. And then the dog, he wants to play with me, so he play bows, but he like bounces back while he does it towards the road, and he slips out of his collar. So he is now free roaming in the middle of the road, and cars are coming. And I ran and I grabbed this dog, and I'm like, no, you will not die on my watch. And I saved that dog's life from the cars.
My hero.
I'm a hero. You should write a script about me. I have a save the dog moment written into my life.
You know what? Fuck whatever I'm working on. It's now going to be the Mike Hayden story.
Indeed. Also, Twitter poll. We'll put this on Twitter. That dog is legally mine now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Like I saved the dog. It's legally mine for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. It's yours.
I'm gonna name him Gizmo.
Yeah.
So that got a little off the rails, everybody.
That was incredible.
Yeah,
I loved it
for sure. So and also interesting because I want to get back to Joe Dante, and talk about how one of the cool things about this movie that I also kind of like to look at is that, to me, what do you know? How did Joey Dante get his start? Do you know how my boy Joey D got his start? Do you know what school he came from? It's not a real school. That's the hint.
Was it the School of Hard Knocks?
The school, yes. He played for he plays for the Arizona Cardinals, and he was in Hard Knocks last year. No, my dude Joe Dante, he is from the school of Roger Corman. He was a Corman kid, so he got started working.
Hell yeah.
So he got started working with Roger Corman and smaller stuff, and then he made Piranha, which is like a really basic over the top exploitative movie. And I really like Gremlins, to me, because I like, in my mind, there is a way to analyze this movie that the actual Gremlins themselves are representation of exploitative filmmakers in the Corman school, and that it is a really like vicious meta circle of like him making a movie about himself and his pals. Because like there. So if you ever read this book, it's Corman's book. It's like how I made $1 million in Hollywood and never lost a cent or something. But he talks about like he had if you don't know anything about Roger Corman, he was a great exploitative filmmaker. He pretty much saved Hollywood multiple times through like very low like TV period when TV was really competing with it by like showing us movies with lots of boobs and lots of blood. And he would get these kids right out of film school, and he would give them jobs and stuff, and then he would just kind of like be like, here, you can make this movie, make it for like $5, and you can do whatever you want with it. And that kind of like he had Coppola. Like Coppola made Boxcar Bertha, right, for Corman, and he had Scorsese was a Corman kid at one point, and he has all these big like next wave golden era of cinema in the 70s type of filmmakers come through him that kind of facilitated through Roger Corman. But essentially, like he always paints a picture of, it's just like all of these nice sweet little kids coming out of film school who like really love traditional Hollywood and beautiful things, and that like he would like make them stay up late to make these movies and like force them to make really brutal like bloody things, but they still had a love of like classical cinema. And if you ever watch like a good Corman movie, like even his like Poe trilogy and stuff, and like all of like Joe Dante does it, and like all like the Death Race movies and stuff, like they have references to like these really classic Hollywood movies, because that's what they would do, is they would like incorporate this like classic Hollywood cinema into their exploitation to like make a really weird amalgamation of stuff. And so like you have these like innocent little mogwais who are like, they're also copies of other movies, right? So it's like you had like Jaws came from Piranha, right? And so like Corman would see like, this is doing really well, I'm going to make a knockoff version of that and sell it like it's that movie, right? And so that's why you have like the Mogwais multiplying and stuff, and then eventually like turning into something completely more dark and sinister, like which is like Gremlins to it, and okay. Gremlins to me is like an exploit knockoff of E.T., like the popularity of E.T. that turns into something really, really horrible. And so that's like an A tier to a B tier of like exploitation, but like in a great way. And then you have like Critters, the movie's Critters, which is like the next tier down of exploitation of these. Like you have an A tier, which is like E.T., the friend with the creature movie, the unknown movie. And then you have Tremors, the kid with the creature, the unknown movie. And then you have Critters, which is like, and it just like keeps going down the step. But like
Mac and Me.
Yes, Mac and Me. Like you have like, but it like. But Gremlins to me is like a weird confessional from Joe Dante about like how these people would just start like recreating these movies for exploitative purposes until they turned into something that was really weird and violent and gross. But then also they would still just go to the movies and like absolutely get the fuck off to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, because they were still like that much of weird historian people and like weird film kids and historian kids. And like that to me is like such an interesting idea to apply to this movie. And I know I'm talking like a ton during the Gremlins podcast, and Killian is like, I would like to say stuff too. I'm very passionate about Gremlins, as you can see. So this is really my time to shine. Anyway, ball is in your court, buddy.
I've just been enjoying listening to you go off about Gremlins. Like, not gonna lie, I enjoy listening to people when they're really passionate about stuff, and man, you are very clearly very passionate and knowledgeable about Gremlins.
And applying Gremlins to like new age exploitative sex and violence movies in the 1960s and 70s, to me, is maybe like the crowning achievement of my life, is being able to make those two connections.
It's the weirdest scholarly debate that I think I've maybe ever heard. All
right, ball's in your court, man. And on the fly, listen, clearly I've spent years thinking about this. What do you think?
The one thing that I immediately thought of when you were saying that, like, Gremlins is sort of like the offshoot of E.T. is, I was like, well, they are both Spielberg films.
Yes, exactly. See, he's in on it too, dude. Spielberg's in on it too. You can't tell me like the dude was like, I'm gonna make Duel, and like then is like and like didn't know what he was doing. He was making a car movie in the desert about like car murder for no money.
Duel also fucks.
Duel fucks too, but Duel came from fucking from Death Race. Like they're like the same idea. I mean, kind of, not really, but it's also like Jaws in the. Like, it's also Jaws. Like, it's Jaws with cars in the desert. Like, it's so like
Jaws is the next logical step from Duel.
Right. Yes. I for sure agree.
That is correct.
And then you have, and to me, it's like you have this weird like circle of stuff where it's like Spielberg knew what he was doing with kind of being exploitative with his movies, and then he makes Jaws, which he really wants to do, and then Joe Dante and Roger Corman come out here and they make. Piranha, and then Steven Spielberg comes in here and he's like, I saw what they did. It'd be funny if they did that to E.T. And then they make Gremlins, which is like violent ripoff. It's not. I don't want to say ripoff because I think they're like less of a movie. I think that Gremlins is a literal masterpiece and it's fantastic, and it's clearly on that borderline of A-list movie because it's clearly got some money and Steven Spielberg behind it, but also B movie in terms of like what you're actually watching. Like, it threads that line really well between like A movie and B movie. And I in terms of like violence and like and kind of the way that it goes off the rails and like the gremlin literally flashing you and stuff. So like
it is clearly the way I would describe it. Gremlins is an A movie with B movie sensibilities.
Yes, agreed.
But there's no argument, I think, that can be made in good faith that Gremlins is a B movie, insofar as it's got the money behind it, it's got name talent in the film, it's produced by Steven Spielberg, and all of the effects are incredible, and so it's it is through and through an A movie, but it is made with the Roger Corman B movie mentality, which is wonderful. And it's one of the reasons that the movie is so good, is because it goes we're not better than this. We're just doing it well.
For sure. And I'm going to go into another tirade and you're going to love it. It's going to be great. So one of the reasons why Roger Corman is so sick is because a lot of things were happening at once between the 50s and 60s when he was starting to make movies for $30,000 to see if he could even do it, and then putting them out in big drive-throughs and on the B-reels and multiplexes and stuff like that. So what was happening was the TV came out, and TV was really it was really kind of fluff and kind of just the novelty of seeing something in your home. And it got to a point where more people wanted to stay home and watch TV than go out to the cinemas. And Hollywood decided that what they were going to do was they were well, you know what? We're going to make things that you can't even see on TV, not in a good way, which is what Roger Corman eventually did, but they were yo, we're going to stop making 20 to 30 movies a year at MGM, and instead we're going to make 5 or 6 movies a year, but shove all of this GD money into those movies and make them 3.5 hours long on 48,732 universe vision, and make the screens absolutely insane. And then you were going to have you had My Fair Lady and Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia, and all of these musicals got really popular, and people were I don't want to watch this GD stuff anymore. It's ridiculous. So they were actually losing their own battle because they thought they could put stuff on TV, on the cinemas that you couldn't see on TV. What Roger Corman did was he was I'm going to do that too, except I'm going to focus on violence and boobies. And so you have his Women in Prison series, and you have even movies like Buckets of Blood with Dick Miller, who was in Gremlins and who was in The Burbs and who was in Piranha. Dick Miller, legendary character actor Dick Miller. The movie's called A Bucket of Blood. There's literally one bucket of blood in it, but on the poster, these very pulpy, poppy posters, you see a bucket of blood, people screaming, blood coming down. And what he would do is he would market them to drive-in audiences, lower tiers on multiplexes, and they started making money. And Hollywood started to be this dude is making a crap ton of money on this stuff that he is not even throwing that much money into. Meanwhile, we just put $80 million into this 3-hour I'm gonna dress up and sing songs for 5 hours kind of type of movie, and it's not working. So what do you think happened? Hollywood started to hire and give opportunities to the people who were making those Corman movies, which includes Joe Dante, which includes Francis Ford Coppola, which includes Martin Scorsese. And so those people who are making exploitative movies for Roger Corman finally got the opportunity to make Hollywood films, because he saw that those filmmakers were the only ones making consistent amounts of money and products that people wanted to see at that time. So, yes, what I'm saying is that The Godfather doesn't exist without A Bucket of Blood.
Bucket of Blood.
Yep. Mic drop.
You're just right, though.
I really am.
But also, it was the sort of thing where, these guys were working for Roger Corman, and then when the studio system started going, oh, shit, they went for a lot of them. They were okay, we're going to give you a mid-tier budget.
Right.
We're going to scale down the budget because you're used to working in mid-tier, low-tier budgets. So if we give you a mid-tier, you're going to have more money than you've ever seen in your life.
Sure.
And you're going to make us, prestige films. And they did, and changed cinema history. But yes, all of this is because Roger Corman was going, yeah, right, Dr. Zhivago is great. And it is. Dr. Zhivago is incredible.
Yeah,
Lawrence
for sure.
of Arabia
Yes.
is wonderful.
That's not to say anything bad about those movies, right?
But no, exactly. But you also... You can't just watch Dr. Zhivago all the time. Like, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers
really
is good.
You can't even watch Lawrence of Arabia like now practically like the way it's supposed to be seen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a whole other thing. Like Hollywood went so far as to give you something that you literally couldn't watch at home. Not being able to foresee that like 30 years in the future we would like that the theatrical runs would turn into test runs for home video and stuff, right? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like. Mm-hmm. Like, we can't even watch Lawrence of Arabia in the way it's supposed to be watched, which is like a screen that's like 17 times as wide as it is tall.
Put Lawrence of Arabia in an IMAX theater,
yes, and
you'll go and you'll come. Like, that's
to the IMAX theater. You will come to the IMAX theater.
No, you will sit in the movie theater and they'll put Lawrence of Arabia or Dr. Zhivago or any of these like classic epic films that were filmed in this like insane aspect ratio and meant to be viewed at a million feet wide.
Yes.
And you sit in an IMAX theater and you watch it and they'll put it up and you'll just full mess your pants.
You will be wetter than a gremlin after midnight. That's all I'm saying to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
it's super cool too, because like, so all that happened, right? And then 30 years later, almost the same thing happened with video, and like Troma and Lloyd Kaufman and stuff, who were like, all right, well, like home video is like booming. I'm going to start making as many low budget things as I can. And then you have like things like The Toxic Avenger, which, you know, is like post or around the same. Did you know when that came out?
Toxic Avenger was the 80s.
Yeah, it was
like 87.
Yeah, so it was like post Superman, right? So it's like all these Superman, right? Well, yeah, obviously, but like I couldn't remember if it was post Batman or not. I think it was pre Batman, but like
I think it's pre Batman.
Pre Batman, but like post Superman, where like the sixth, but probably at that point, like the third or fourth Superman movie's coming out, and they're like, and Lloyd Kaufman is over here like, all right, I'm gonna make my own superhero movie for like $0, and it's gonna be outrageous and violent and through the roof, and we have like these things that are kind of circling around, and then what happened is James Gunn got his start making Troma movies like Tromeo and Juliet, and then Disney sees that he's making a crap ton of money making weird superhero movies for independently and like for Troma, and then they hand him like $300 million to make a Guardians movie. And so the same things are happening over and over again, and I think that's really, really, really fascinating.
Well, yeah, history is cyclical.
For sure. Anyway, how about Gremlins, right?
Gremlins. Yes.
They're cute, right?
Let's see if I can
the Mogwais are cute, right?
Let's see if we can dovetail this whole thing back into
Gremlins.
Back into Gremlins.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Okay. So.
I'll try. I think I got it. I got it. Don't worry.
I don't know if we can.
No, I can do this. So all of this is happening, right? With this, but at the same time, you now have Steven Spielberg, who is like even at the time, like, you know, it was the 80s. He was getting to like peak Spielbergian like level right here. Yeah, Jaws, Close Encounters, which is a poop movie, by the way. And then E.T. He's like hit after hit after hit, and I find it really interesting that he hires Joe Dante to make he produces a Joe Dante movie, which he's coming off of something he's coming off of Piranha, right? And maybe and so which is an exploitative movie of Jaws, and so I think to me that's even just another way of saying like, hey, look, Gremlins is this weird specific movie that has this weird kind of like transitional history of Hollywood behind it, but you would never think that way of this movie, because on the surface it's just this like kind of weird like little creature but friend, like kid befriends creature movie from the 80s that was a popular trope at the time. But if you look past it and you look at who's making it and who's producing it and the subtext of the movie of these like duplicates literally happening and them turning into this like cute little floofy bunny stuff to like murderous things, Gremlins itself is such a weird little jewel of zeitgeist like history that I think is so fascinating, and that's what makes it one of my favorite movies.
Point of order, the pipeline from Joe Dante going from Corman to Spielberg is he helped Rock and Roll High School get made.
Yes.
And then from there was given The Howling.
Okay, I knew The Howling fit in here somewhere. I just wasn't sure when.
Yes. He was given The Howling, and off of the success of The Howling, he was offered to direct one of the segments in the Twilight Zone movie, which was a Spielberg joint.
He makes the best one too. Dante did.
Yes, It's a Good Life.
Yeah, he made the best one.
It's so good. It's the one that nobody died in.
So anyway, he went from after Howling, he then got the opportunity to do the Twilight Zone,
and then immediately after that was given Gremlins.
Gremlins, right? And where was Piranha in this?
Piranha was 1978.
1978. So that literally a year after Jaws, which is appropriate.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it was, yes. So 1978, he did Piranha. Then off of Piranha, realistically, I think the fact that he helped Rock and Roll High School get made is inconsequential. It's really Piranha goes to The Howling. The Howling goes to and
let's not
those two get him on the radar for Spielberg, and then he starts working with Spielberg.
Let's not undervalue Rock and Roll High School, because Rock and Roll High School.
I'm not undervaluing anything.
I mean, PJ Souls alone is worth discussion. But anyway,
I'm not arguing.
We're not saying
PJ Souls. I'm arguing Rock and Roll High School.
Anyway, sorry. So Gremlins, right?
Yes.
Gremlins. So okay.
This episode's all the fuck all over the place.
This episode's amazing. Anyway, so so let's take a step back of these really weird film trivia history things of why I love this movie. Experientially, I love this movie because I really do feel like for the first X amount of time in the movie, it feels like a like you said, the prologue, the first act, it feels like a traditional Hollywood movie where this kid's going to get a pet and he's going to learn some lessons. And if you didn't see a trailer for this movie, didn't know what was going on, the transition from that type of movie into what it turns into, and I think the scene that really changes, that really flips a switch on it, is which I think is one of the best scenes in the movie, is the scene where the mom ends up fighting the Gremlins. That scene is so cool for so many different reasons.
That is the scene that I was thinking about. That scene is so good and so violent.
Yes.
And she puts that fucking gremlin in the microwave and you watch it explode. And
it happens to such an interesting character too. The mom up until that point is just the mom, right? And usually in you would expect a neighbor to be the first one to get attacked or to go, or an inconsequential character, not the mom to the main character. But mom of the main character just goes rounds with this gremlin in the kitchen to the point where, okay, well, you're kind of figuring out what this movie is. You're the mom is the first one to go. She's the one that's going to get stabbed. She's the one that's going to die. And then the movie's going to change from there. But that's not what happens. And she kicks the shit out of the gremlin. And I think that's awesome.
I think you see the science teacher.
Oh, that's right. Yes, the science teacher.
Beforehand.
Yes, the science teacher does get got first. That's right.
Which is a great example of build, actually.
Yes.
Because you have this character who is ultimately a little inconsequential because he's just the science teacher.
Right.
He was introduced in a scene in order to showcase that he was helping them.
Right.
And then 2 scenes later gets got by the Gremlins, and then you cut from there to the scene with the mom.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
So it's a great escalation because you introduce that the Gremlins are extremely dangerous, and then you put a character that we've seen a little bit more screen time with there.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, is she gonna die? Is this gonna be a whole thing? And you watch her put one of them into the microwave.
Yes.
And it's so good.
Which is incredible. God, this movie's so good. I love it so much.
It's so good. Gremlins is an incredible film.
Go watch it.
Also,
super slumber party of Gremlins and the Burbs.
Yes. Also, the sound that Gizmo makes when he sings is like it gives me endorphin rushes.
It's so good. I can't do it. I tried, but I'll try it again. Did I do a good job? Did I do it?
You did a great job, Chewie.
Did I do a job?
You did a job.
I did a job. That's good. That's good at least.
Yeah.
So, here, let's get down to the real brass tacks here, because this is an age-old question, and I feel like it really needs to be addressed on this podcast, because we've done nothing but talk about really specific Gremlin things on this podcast.
Yes.
If you had a Mogwai, what would its name be?
You go first.
Oh man, if I had a Mogwai, his name would be. It's hard because Gizmo is such a perfect name for the Mogwai, but mine might be something silly like Cheez-It, because he'd probably
Cheez-It is so good.
Cheez-It's a good one. That like my next dog, whenever that may be, probably in 20 years, because my dogs will never die, is going to be named Cheez-It.
I might name mine Zip.
Zip. Okay.
Yep, Zip.
Okay, I like.
I don't know why. I like the monosyllabic.
And do you think that would you wait to feed him after midnight, or would you do it immediately?
I would never feed him after midnight.
His duplicate, sorry. After you got him wet, giggity, and then you would feed his duplicates, right? So you could have a gremlin, like, at the ready.
Yeah, and then that one would be named Boblin the Goblin.
Boblin the Goblin.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off. Please tell me more about Boblin the Goblin.
Yeah, so Boblin the Goblin, and I would train him. I would be like, hey, man, here's the thing. I know you have, like, an unyielding desire for chaos and evil, and here's the fun thing. So do I. So just, like, trust me here. We're gonna go off of this, but let's work together. Let's be symbiotic here. I'll feed you, and then, like, facilitate moments for you to be crazy as long as you are chill with my friends and my family and I. And I think after letting him off the leash a couple times to do the thing, like, I think he'd be like, okay.
Yeah, Boblin would understand. You just need to get on his good side.
Yeah, Boblin the
so
Goblin.
this kind of like it brings up another thing that I think is kind of relevant to this movie, and if it is, then this movie is just an absolute. If everything we're saying is correct, this movie is just an absolute goddamn mess of subtext. But like, also part of this movie to me that I think is really fascinating is like a fear of the other, and by the other I mean like. This is a horrible word, but this is how how we view it in a critical subtext. But like Orientalism and right, and even
it's
like
bad in this movie.
and that, and even like it kind of goes in that thing, but also like the Cold War, which is happening at this time, because they're like Dick Miller is even like oh, those gremlins, they're in all the Russian parts and stuff, and so like you have this weird character that sets up this like, are we being invaded storyline, which he like still thinks is going on when he's being attacked, but also like they get Gizmo from like the most awfully represented, that does not age well at all, like like a representative of Asian culture, like a super awful thing, and they get this thing.
I didn't want to say anything,
no,
but when you were talking
important.
about the opening scene, I was like, because I rewatched it to do this podcast, right?
Yes.
And I had forgotten about that scene, and then he shows up and like is just full Fu Manchu.
Ooh, it's bad.
And then they do the gong.
Yes,
and I was just like,
listen. We are fair here at Nightmare Network. We attack these things. So a few years ago, we did an episode on the Monster Squad, and we definitely addressed the homophobic monster in the room, which really the villain in that movie is homophobia. So, but for sure, like. This is a movie that did not age super well in terms of those types of scenes, but I find it interesting though at the time, because it was made by a white man. You already have like Steven Spielberg planning some Indiana Jones movies where the Soviets are villains again, right? And then you have you have this really weird representation of Eastern culture, right? And that I think like that includes like Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, as well as the Asian culture that's being represented by these very offensive stereotypes. And then what happens is that these imports, essentially, right, is like, I guess is what you can look at them, these imports that are coming into this town from the east, right, they end up not working like they should, and they end up causing destruction to the town, including doing the exact thing that Murray says in the movie, which is that they like live in the machines, right? And what happens to him? He gets plowed into his house with a tractor, right? And so like he literally sees the gremlins possess these machines, like he thinks that they're going to, and so. That to me is something like this movie is just really wild, and there is a lot going on that I don't even know if it's supposed to be going on, but I think subconsciously we were at a time in the 80s where white dudes were making like really kind of weird movies, like of not properly represented other people, but we're fair. But like I said, we're fair here, and we need to address the elephants in the room.
Yeah, I do. As much as I love Gremlins, I think that, like, I'm so glad that we actually do get a chance to talk about this, because there are some subtexty things in Gremlins that super do not age well at all. Like, anything, like, you sort of hit the hammer or the nail on the head when you were like, it is sort of about this, like, fear of the other.
Yes.
And, like, you have this, like, incredibly Orientalist, like, character at the beginning, and then you have like the Mogwai come in, and then like the Gremlins, who are like literally like an invasive species from another country, and this like crazy right-wing conspiracy theorist guy who's all about like, oh, America's the best, blah, 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 ends up ultimately being proven correct by the thing that happens. And I'm like, there's some iffy political undertones to a lot of sections of this movie.
Yes.
That I think you have to address when you talk about 80s movies, because it's okay to like things that are problematic. You just have to accept that they're problematic and talk about it.
Yes, agreed.
And Gremlins, as wonderful as it is problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've hit the nail on the head here, and that it is tough. And I've had this kind of conversation with myself about a lot of things where it's like, man, like how do you separate? And it's a conversation that's happening a lot right now. Is how do you separate the art from the artist is one of them, but along the same veins as what we're doing is like, how do you separate the art from the time, from the cultural relevance? And I think, they're not the perfect company in the world per se, but like Disney does a pretty good job of that, where they will preface old cartoons that have very harmful stereotypes in them, and they'll preface it with something like, we've left this unedited to preserve the historical context and authenticity of the historical context of the content, but they are filled with dated references and are not like they give that very specific kind of thing before it. And I think that invites us, the viewers, to watch these things that, a lot of people love Gremlins. Overall, for sure, it's a Christmas movie, and it's beloved by many. But I think it's important for the viewer to be able to watch critically and to recognize what ages well and what doesn't, and then come to terms with that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do think there is something to be said about the ending of Gremlins, which is really interesting, in which we have that caricature show back up again.
Right.
And sort of, and I don't know if this is what Joe Dante meant to say with this, but there is sort of this like underlying text of like, if you white people from the middle of nowhere cannot learn how to like peacefully coexist with things with other cultures and rules than you, then you are not ready to have any of it. And then takes the Mogwai away.
Yeah.
And like the whole, and I kind of like,
that is, I don't know
really
if that's what he
meant to say, but that is a good like note where it's like, hey, like the Mogwai is the best this like picture perfect idyllic representation of like
of cultures
of
coming
another
together.
culture coming in
Yes.
and being like awesome, but just like it's like, hey, don't do these things because they're a problem around this thing, and these backwards ass people just like fucking couldn't do it.
Yep.
And then like caused a big ass issue, and so it's like, cool, now you don't even get the best part of like this outside culture.
That's a really good point.
You're just left with your own mistakes.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I like thinking about it more along the lines as a critique than a warning, I guess, or a cautionary tale, right? So I
hope that's what he meant to do.
Yeah, agreed. He seems like a cool enough guy for sure.
I mean, it is the 80s, and it's hey, I don't care what side of the political aisle you are on. Fuck Ronald Reagan.
For sure. You know what? Let's end it's fitting to end the Gremlins podcast with fuck Ronald Reagan.
Fuck Ronald Reagan.
Roll credits.
Confirm your kill.
Fuck Ronald Reagan. Confirm your kill. That's right. Yeah, all right. Well, this has been really interesting. I really might, in the editing process, just end it with fuck Ronald Reagan.
Let's do it.
Okay, boom. We're done. We're not even... All right. Great. The end. Thanks for listening to Season 3 of Nightmare Network. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and keep an eye on all of our socials for special announcements and videos. Remember, here at Nightmare Network, you share your scares.